Bernstein again. Big opening. Pass 5. Pass 10. Perko's a man. And he goes all the way to the 15-yard line. 17 yards of the carry.
Welcome back to the Believe in Badgers podcast on the Believe Podcast Network, presented by betonline.ag. Once again, I'm Matt Perkins, joined today by returning champion with no Bernie in the house, but that's okay. Because, like I said, we've got the returning champ, David Moorman. David, it's so good to see you.
Matt, great to see you, man. I'm sad I'm not with Bernie, but I'll gladly be his backup and step up to the plate. I'm excited to be here and help you co-host today. I'm pumped.
Well, and you brought a friend with you. I did. So why don't you let us know who you brought with you today?
Yeah, so I figured, former O-line, I've lost a little weight. I needed to bring another big fella to the table who still has the stature about him to really make this a true worthwhile podcast. So bringing Tyler Beach on. Tyler and I played together for a few years when I was there. We were on the Big Ten West Championship team back in 2019 when we were still humming. And, Tyler's been he's been a great friend of mine, and he's gone through an interesting last couple of years just with all the changes that have happened. He played through the COVID season, which was, really interesting. And then, most recently this past season with all the coaching changes and turmoil they went through. Now he's in New Jersey. He's training for the draft. He's going to do great things. So was super excited that Tyler was able to come on, and I'm pumped to let the fans hear from him.
Yeah, it's awesome to be on. It's awesome to meet you now, Matt.
Yeah, for sure. Like we actually DM'd like a bunch before. So this was actually what's the word I'm looking for? Kismet or whatever it is that you're able to hop on with us today. I'm super excited. I know the fans are excited. We're also excited to remind you guys that we are presented by betonline.ag, where they remain your number one source for all of your online sports wagering needs. You name it, they've got it over at betonline.ag, especially as NBA season ramps up towards the postseason. Baseball's back. You guys know where you need to go. Head on over to the website or use your mobile device to sign up and receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit with our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts. All right. Today, though, we're going to start. First of all, we sent a shout out on social media asking you guys for questions. And boy, did we get questions, which I absolutely love seeing. So the first question, though, that we have to ask is, how did you get so sexy, David Moorman?
Was that actually a question that came through?
That is one question from Gabe Lloyd.
Gabe is the one who, all right. So Gabe Lloyd, for everyone who knows, Gabe was a tight end, a year younger than me. So he was class of, graduated 2020, but he was a tight end. He was one of those guys that just came in scrappy, clawed his way. He was a great special teams player. Injuries hurt him at the end. I think he ended up going to NDSU and finished his career there. But now he's like a TikTok star. He's like really into like vintage clothing. And he like literally has an account where he just goes around northern Wisconsin, I think, like going to different thrift stores and like talking about his finds and like redoing like these custom hats. So I don't know. I think he has like close to like 100,000 followers on like Instagram and TikTok. So to answer that question, I'm just trying to look like Gabe. That's all that matters. I want to be like him.
All right. And then second question. This can go to both of you guys. Who's your favorite strength coach of all time, and why is it Costi? I think you know who that came from.
Do you know what? I mean, Tyler, firsthand, like our entire strength staff was unreal. Like Coach K, Coach Snee, all the guys that came in, Coach Graves, like everyone was great. But day one, you come in as an offensive lineman recruit. A person that immediately comes up to you is Costi, right? And right away gives you a nickname within that first summer. And then the nickname will legit stick with you for like the next like 4 or 5 years. But he's a hilarious guy for everyone who's met him. He's an all-time legend and really like he knows what it takes to be great at Wisconsin and what a great offensive lineman, looks like on and off the field, and the things that he does. It's work hard, play hard. And no one did it better than Costi. So he's the best of all time. And Tyler, you probably know that. I mean,
yeah, it's like having a second line coach, like in the weight room at all times, like, especially this past year, like he was super helpful with us, like helping us with like coaching techniques and stuff. And he's he's hilarious too. He's really hilarious. So it's like having like,
so what are the nicknames then though? What was your nickname from Costi?
I don't know if I can say it on here, but
I have an edit button. Don't worry.
It was Taylor.
All right, I like it. I like it. Well,
Taylor
Moorman, what'd you get?
Mine was Moorhead. I mean, that wasn't his best work. There's some ones out there that are pretty hilarious. But so we came in. Michael Dieter was the golden boy because he came in and at first we enrolled early. He was dominating that spring. He almost played Costy's senior year that last year with Gary Anderson. I think they made the Big Ten championship. And then the next year he was like an automatic starter and he was like the leader of our line for the 4 years he was there afterwards. And after I think after Costy left though, after Dieter left, I had a pretty decent spring ball. And Rudy was talking about me. So I became golden boy for at least 3 weeks during the spring. And then camp happened. It wasn't me anymore. But I had a short stint as the golden boy. And I was always pumped about Costy, getting to wear that hat for at least a little bit.
So what is so I mean, one of our favorite things to talk about here, Tyler, is first year, is your redshirt year. You redshirted. A lot of people redshirted. What was your redshirt experience like? What was your time on the practice squad like? Walk us through some of your favorite moments from the practice squad, because I think a lot of the best stories, the way we get to know guys, is through what they experienced in that first season. Yeah,
I'd say your redshirt year is always just a transition year for the most part. Just picking up the speed of the game, huge difference between high school and college ball for sure. But I just one of my biggest memories was I remember it was the first day. I didn't really know the playbook. We were doing a young guy team at the end of practice, and I was next to a guy. His name was Alex Fenton. He was a part of the program for a little bit. Mm-hmm. I remember we were doing young guy team, and we had all these plays that we had no idea what we were running. And he just looks at me. He's like, "What are we supposed to do?" And I was like, "Just block the guy in front of you." And so we just did that the whole first practice. I remember Coach Rudolph was screaming his tail off at us, "What the you guys doing?" We had no idea what we were doing, just young guys running around. But it's definitely that big transition phase, and the freshman haircuts and all that. It's all just a initiation process going through that.
What was the hardest part of that? What was the hardest part of that for you?
I'd say the hardest was just understanding the playbook stuff at first. You don't realize how in depth it is, because in high school it's truly just block the guy in front of you, right? And then, but in college, it's you got assignments, you got responsibilities, and just kind of realizing that kind of took some time. But once you started to figure it out, things started to speed up quickly.
Yeah, and Tyler, no, I hear you, man. I kind of went through the same thing. And Matt, I feel most offensive linemen, when they come in, it's pretty much already made up that you're most likely going to redshirt. So you walk into camp and you're like, oh, I have a whole year to kind of figure things out. So during the first summer when you're working out, it's a culture shock, right? All of a sudden, you're working out harder than you've ever worked out a day in your life. You're on your own, you're having fun, you're going to college classes for the first time. And, a lot of the kids, the skill positions, they come in, they're hitting the playbook hard day one because they have a chance to play that year. And I felt victim to this. I didn't necessarily hit the playbook as hard as I should have that first summer, because you're oh, I'm not going to get a single rep during fall camp. All of a sudden, fall camp comes around and Rudy tells you, all right, boys, get in there. And they call ice gap. And you're what the hell am I supposed to do? I don't know ice gap. Where's the point? I'm what's the point? I have no idea what that is. Where's the mic? So I feel a victim of that for sure. And I think it's gotten the best of us at a certain point.
Do you think I've actually, this is something I want to ask you guys, because one of my favorite adages about college football is that the further you are away from the ball, the easier it is to play early. Do you think that's true? Wide receivers and corners, you're more likely to get on the field early than you are if you are, an interior lineman.
Do you know what? I think it's one of those things when you are just a great athlete and you're lights out, speed, you're very strong, and you're kind of out there on an island by yourself. Your natural talent can just kind of show, right? You don't have to rely on the guy next to you. Obviously you have to rely on your quarterback to get you the ball. And if you're, blocking, you want to make sure the running back makes the right cut and makes you look good and things of that nature. But as a tailback, as a DB, as a linebacker, or a defensive end in certain cases, right? People who can just go play football, it's really easy to come in early. Offensive line, in my opinion, is one of those positions that it's kind of challenging to come in and play at an early age because you have to learn how to play with the guy next to you, right? You have to take in so many different things in order to be successful. It's really hard, like Tyler said, to come in and just block the guy in front of you because our offense does 10 different things based off of, the certain front the defense puts in front of you. And then you have to learn how to, get in a rhythm with if you're tackle with the guard with the center, and with tight ends as well, especially in the offense that we played in for so long. So I think that just takes time and it takes continuity, and you just got to keep grinding and getting better there. And then eventually it clicks. And once you have that, it makes it all worthwhile. But Tyler, I don't know, would you disagree?
No, I would agree with you. Like that whole like redshirt year is just like building relationships with like the rest of the team. So that way you're able to play well, like with everybody. Cause like you were saying, like it's all about continuity with the O-line, like knowing who you're playing with, like how the guy next to you plays. Like that first whole year is like kind of like building friendships, with everybody, and then kind of developing like, how that guy plays or understanding how he plays and just associated with that. That kind of helps you like throughout your process too.
Yeah, actually, and one of the questions I actually wanted to ask about that, because I know something that Coach Rudolph prided himself on was cross-training positions. And you guys all played a bunch of different positions across the line. I mean, I think, Tyler, did you start at, 3 different positions? 4 different positions, I think, during your career? At least 3. It's at least both tackles and left guard. I don't know if you started at right guard ever, but I know you played there a little bit.
Yeah.
Demo, I think you played every position during your time. Yeah. Like, what is that hard to pick up? Because you guys were probably both, left tackles in high school, I assume. The glamour position. You don't get a scholarship to Wisconsin if you're not doing that, probably. What was it like going from playing, just on the blind side on an island by yourself, having to learn all these different positions? Like, I'll ask you first, Tyler, because you played, most recently.
Right. So like I was, tackle was always like in pass protection, like it was always tougher because it was like you're on an island, you may or may not get the slide your way. But then this past year when I was playing guard, I was like, wow, things are so much easier in here. You'd set sometimes guy to block, sometimes you wouldn't. So it was like it's a huge difference from playing outside of the interior. And then like for me, I played a little tight end, a little of the O-line tight end history with Demo as well. There's a big line of succession in there. And then I did a little fullback as well back in the day. So yeah, a little mix and match around that.
Tyler, watch your tongue with the guard versus tackle. No, no, I mean both. I mean, I think both positions pose different challenges, right? Like I came in and I was one of those guys where like, similar to Tyler, right off the bat, like, they think that you're athletic enough to play tackle. So they kind of put you there and they say, get good at it. And then as your body develops, you kind of realize that maybe my best position would be to bump interior a little bit and let somebody else come in at tackle. And I think the biggest biggest difference for me is just like the type of sets you take, right? Like at tackle, it's way more of a sort of a mind game, right? Like where certain players, you just got to get depth right off the bat because, if you don't get that depth, like, you're going to get absolutely destroyed. But then some players, who are like those stronger, stockier guys, you kind of want to take them like right on the line and mix in a couple hard sets. And, but the most important thing is living your life square, which is Rudy used to always say. He's just like, you got to be square to the line of scrimmage because then it's really hard for guys to, rip inside or make a spin move on you and get you in an uncomfortable position. So that was the main thing at tackle. But then when you jump in at guard, at least in pass pro, like it's pretty helpful because usually you just have a 3 technique or you have like a nose you're coming down and giving help on. So it just makes your life a little bit easier and you don't necessarily have to worry about the DN who runs a 4-3 or the Zach Bonds of the world who are like outside linebackers, but they can rush the passer better than anybody, out there. So it kind of simplifies it. And at that point, it's just being a brute. But being a guard, and Tyler, you probably know this firsthand, like you just have to really be able to cover a lot of ground in the run game. Right. Because you got to go reach those wide threes. And so much of what we do at guard is opening up the run game, open up those alleys up the middle. So guys like JT or Braylon can hit those big runs and not necessarily have to bounce everything outside. So I think that was really the big difference for me. But would you agree with that? Or do you have a different experience with making that move?
Yeah, I agree. Like for our offense, like specifically, the point of attack was always at the interior position. Like, there'd be times where you could be a tackle and you could have like a reach on somebody and you could put like a stop sign out there to do just as good as you would at reaching those 5 techniques. So it was like, the offense was like in the run game was just built around those interior threes, just kind of getting movement. Like Demo said, just, gaining enough ground to be able to cover all that stuff.
Yeah, and Wisconsin's always had a lot of movement with the offensive line. Even going back to the Barry Alvarez days, you see a lot of pulling and trapping. Even when they're running Rondane power, basically. And the same thing has happened for a long time. Was that sort of something that, I mean, you knew going into Wisconsin, Tyler? And was that something that attracted you to Wisconsin? Is that the type did you care about sort of like what kind of offense you were playing in during the recruiting process?
Yeah, like a lot of it was, Wisconsin was like a heavy pro style offense, and viewing that, like I kind of thought about it. And it was like it'd make transition from college to pro a lot easier. And I was a young kid, kind of just still thinking about that kind of stuff. But as I've gone through like the processes now and playing in the Hula Bowl and talking to NFL scouts and coaches, a lot of the stuff is really similar to Wisconsin's pro style offense. Like a lot of the same schemes, a lot of the same techniques. Like I've been able to translate a ton of that stuff over to that.
Tyler, question for you, man, because you bring it up, like you're going through the pre-draft process right now. Like you had the Hula Bowl, you performed really well there. There's great reports coming out about your status, moving forward and the opportunity that's going to present itself. But I have to imagine the transition from being so team-oriented till this like weird period of your life where it's all about yourself, right? And getting yourself ready for the next level. I have to imagine that's been a huge difference in your mindset.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, cause what Wisconsin is all about, like, put the team first. And that's the mentality like every O-line coach, drills into us and, our process, like going through the season. So, having to like just focus on yourself and just to be about you has been definitely weird. It's, like putting yourself first, being a little selfish at times. So it's definitely just it's a difference, definitely for sure, Demo.
I'm sure, man. No, I always say this is like, aside from the military, football, college football, especially at the level, Wisconsin's at, is probably the most regulated as far as, time goes, right? Like you only get certain days, certain weeks off in the entire year. Otherwise, your butt's expected to be at the right place at the right time. And I got to imagine like going through this pre-draft process and being able to focus on yourself and just really dive into working out, but also having a little bit more freedom. But at the same time, you can't fully accept it right now because your eyes on the prize has got to be a different mindset. At least for me, it would have been. But I have to imagine, pro days coming up. We talked about it the other day, but for the pro day, what are you most excited for? Is there a particular exercise or drill that you're really looking forward to, or is it just kind of getting back with the guys you grinded with for the past couple of years and getting a chance to go through that really cool moment with them?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be cool to see all the guys that I played with this past year and kind of the dudes that all the dudes that are achieving their dreams, and especially seeing Tippmann and stuff. Like I'll be excited to see him. So yeah, like there's no drills like specifically that I can think of, that I'm really excited for, but just kind of like showing out for everybody, coming back to Wisconsin and, just busting my tail.
So what's the thing that you'd say you feel like you've been focusing the most on right now in this time period between the bowl game and draft day?
I would say a lot of it is just like the running portion stuff. Cause like it's like, we'll do it. Like we'll do it, like before, like we do spring ball, we'll do some like testing and stuff and winter workouts, during college season. We'll test like 5-10-5 and L drill and 40, a little bit, but then like, you don't realize the amount of running that you actually have to do in preparation for all this stuff. It's definitely not fun for a big man. I'll say that, but, it's good. Like just having to do all this and like learning from, the best of the best. Like we had an Olympic runner come in and go through 40-yard dashes with us. And it was so cool. Like the different, things that are about it. I mean, there's so many details, I guess you could say that are with it that, you'd never think that you'd have to think about. So just realizing all like the small things that are a part of it is definitely different.
So I want to go back just a little bit back to Port Washington High School here for a minute, because I want to talk a little bit more about your, we got some great stories from Dave when he was on about his recruiting experience. And you were another guy. I mean, you were recruited by tons and tons and tons of programs. What was our first question in this is usually when did you realize you could play football at the next level? And then B, like what was your official visit to Wisconsin like?
Yeah. So like the time that I realized that I think I was, good enough to play, big time football. I remember I was a sophomore going into my or I was a freshman going into my sophomore year, and I just made varsity, and I was starting to kind of feel into my body. You know, I was losing some of that baby fat. I, you know, got a lot taller, and I remember I went to this local Wisconsin camp. It was called the WFCA Combine, and it was just like this cool little camp. And I remember I did pretty well at it, and I had Illinois State's coaches came up to me and they talked to me and sent me a letter and stuff. And I was like, oh wow, like I got an opportunity to play, Division I football, whatever level that may be at. So I was really excited for that, and just having that opportunity was super cool. And then like going to Wisconsin, making that decision, like Joe Rudolph was like the guy that, he was kind of like the big piece of me is why I wanted to go there. Like, he's an awesome dude. Like the way he spoke, the things he talked about, like I greatly appreciated it. And, I may not have entirely known what I was into when I got there, but I was happy about it when I got there and realized, why he was doing all the stuff he was.
What makes Coach Rudolph special?
I would say just, his attitude on camaraderie and, the way he talks about like being a group, being a team, just his approach to that is something that's special that, not a lot of coaches have. It's almost like, it's just something that you just don't see. It's weird to explain, but we'd be in meetings, and rather than talking about football, we sometimes spend half the meeting of him telling like some crazy story that has nothing to do with football that you think. And then at the very end, he somehow ties it back to some lesson that has to do with staying square or something. There's just something ridiculous like that. But it was like, he would do these ridiculous stories to get you to remember these things, which is what was like fascinating to me.
Yeah. And Matt, like, I think the beautiful thing about Coach Rudolph is he put so much detail into our meetings. Right. And like Tyler said, he would go on these, long stories and you're like, what's the point? And then he ties it back. So that was, it made life interesting because you're in these meeting rooms for so long, you're grinding every day. So it's nice to be able to have that break and learn the game of football that way. But at the same time, he did such a great job of preparing us like each day, whether it's a spring ball practice, whether it's getting ready to hit a PR and winter workouts. And then, most importantly, going through like the season, we knew exactly what defenses were going to run as far as stunts go every single game. He made sure that we were drilling each thing day in and day out of practice, whether I was getting out there super early or, staying after practice late when everybody else is in the locker room already showered up and we're still grinding on the field. Like, he did all of those things that in the moment you're pissed at him. You don't necessarily appreciate. But when we were winning on Saturday, that's when you appreciate it the most. And now, since I'm like even, moved on from my football life and I'm now in my career, like, being detailed in every aspect of my life now has been super helpful. Right. And I attribute a lot of that to the lessons I learned from Coach Rudolph. So that was the main thing. And then two, like Tyler said, like just the lessons you learned from his life, like super interesting guy, right? He was one of the original Wisconsin Rose Bowl offensive line that really just kind of set the tone and really created the tradition that Wisconsin offensive lineman is today. But he went through some challenges in his life. And I remember there's something he shared, like he was going through something. He went downstairs and he opened up a random book that on his parents' bookshelf. And it was, I forget the author, but it was a quote from a Holocaust survivor. And he said, and the quote was, somewhere between stimulus and response is the freedom to choose.
Yep. Right.
And Rudy kind of comes up and he's like, hey, you can't always control what happens in your life. You can't control adversity. You can't control challenges. You can't control, a big D lineman swimming past you or bull rushing you and, sacking the quarterback. But what you can control and what you can choose to do is how you respond. Right. And so I think that always has, really, stuck with me. And throughout my life, that's kind of like the one mantra or quote I sort of like live by on a daily basis. And, for that reason, getting it from Coach Rudolph and having him apply it to football in the moment, but now it applies to so many other areas of life. That's just kind of the dude and mentor and leader and men that he is. And I'm super appreciative for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, obviously, like everyone we've talked to who's been coached by Coach Rudolph has talked about that sort of that culture he establishes. And this actually sort of blends right in with one of the questions that we got from what I'm assuming is Tweetly, unless it's T Wheatley 51. Thanks for sending the question, but they want to know what key attributes contribute to good locker room culture. And so, I will sort of open up the floor to both of you guys here. I guess I'll start with you, Tyler. Like, at least like what to you is most responsible for good locker room culture? Is it leaders? Is it coaches? Is it it's open-ended question here.
Yeah, I'd say it's a mix of all of them, right? Like I think the most important aspect of locker room culture is like having the respect and like people liking each other in the locker room. I think that's like the biggest piece is guys got to be friends. Like dudes got to be able to like hang out outside of the football field. Like even if it's like going to parties and stuff, like just having that culture of like being close enough with somebody to be able to tell them when they're doing something wrong is kind of like the culture that I think drives like a winning program. Because if you have that kind of relationship with somebody, you're not afraid to stand up and say like, hey man, like you shouldn't be doing that, or you got to pick it up, like in a game or even a practice or even in like their study sessions for like film and stuff. Like just being able to approach those people and just rather than, being shy about it because you don't know them, like if you know the guy, like you can say something about it. I don't know. What do you think, Demo?
No, I think Tyler hit on the head. But I mean, the main thing that I kind of think about, and it goes back to what Coach Chris used to always like say, is be authentic, right? And really what I mean by that is like the locker room, I mean, especially in Wisconsin, like everyone's a great guy for the most part, but like also we're at the same time like a family, and we're very protective of, the guys in the locker room and the tradition and everything we do on a daily basis. And if you come in and you're not authentic, you're not yourself, you try to be something that you're not, it's really easy to like read, and we spit you out and we chew you out. And the guys who haven't made it, I would say the number one thing is they weren't themselves. They try to overcompensate for some stuff, and that causes division. And then at a certain point, like it was a program like Wisconsin with the type of guys we have in the locker room with everything the program stands for, you're just not going to make it. So I think that's probably the most important thing.
I think that's a really interesting answer though, because I think that it goes to what you guys are both talking about is accountability and respect, right? Like respect that if what Tyler says, like if you tell a guy, hey, you're doing this wrong, they're not going to be like, why are you lashing out at me? Why are you picking on me? Why do you hate me? It's no, because you actually like love me and care about me, that you want to do that. And I think that is something that's very applicable, not just for locker room cultures, but for corporate cultures, for any sort of large group setting. Another question we had from the folks, Nick Noss wants to know, David, did you hate Joel Klatt for what he said about you during the Ohio State game?
What a question. Matt, do you remember what he said about me during the Ohio State game?
I don't. I have no recollection of what he said about you. So
I mean, I was on the field, so I heard after the fact. But I mean, that game in 2019, like we just got upset by Illinois the week before, which was brutal. And then we play Ohio State, and Chase Young is like, the hot thing in college football at that point. And we basically we knew he was going to be over Cole, and Cole's on like All-American, so Cole handled his own. But it was kind of like, David, whenever you have a position to, like first responsibility, peek the mic, see if it's blitzing. If he's not blitzing, you go give help to Cole right away just to be there for extra support. And I think it was a second half. They were starting to pull away. And we have I think it's third down and like 8 or something. We have a pass pro. All of a sudden it's me in the mic, and I peek the mic, and he doesn't look like he's going to come, but I like hesitate just a little too long. And I go to give help to Cole, and I think Chase got Cole with an inside move, and Cole thought I was going to be there for support, but he just went boom right by me and sacked Jack. And Joe Klatt on Big Noon Kickoff, national TV, Fox goes, David Moorman, more like David the Open Doorman. And so, the rest of the year, everyone to this day calls me the Open Doorman whenever they see me.
It was so bad. I remember we were on the flight back I was on the flight back, and I look over it, and I get it. Like rough games are tough. I totally get it. I have been in Demo's shoes plenty of times. And I remember I look over at Demo's phone, and he's got hurt by Johnny Cash playing on the flight back.
That's all I could do.
It was after we saw it. Because sometimes we would like search up our names just kind of for fun, like after games, just to see what people say. Like we wouldn't care, but sometimes some of the stuff would be funny, like the Open Doorman stuff. It's like I remember we were just looking at that, and I was just like, oh.
Well, I remember like I didn't know what happened, and I I probably shouldn't have hopped on Twitter, but I hopped on Twitter, and my buddy from high school, shout out Alec Morgan, one of my closest friends to this day, he like was in a Twitter fight with some guy, and I was like, why is he in a Twitter fight? What's Alex saying? And I hop in, and it's like somebody tweeted like this quote tweeted Joe Klatt like David the Open Doorman. and my buddy Alec like hopped on him, like appreciate him defending me. But it was just like, I don't know, like you're just down bad. Like we just lost 2 games. That, Ohio State game, we all knew that was gonna be a battle, but it was just the fact that we just felt like the season was kind of slipping away from us when we came in 6-0, and like all you could do at that point is like learn from your mistakes, and you gotta like laugh it off. So sometimes you like pretend like you're going through a breakup or something, and you listen to like breakup songs like "Hurt" by Johnny Cash, and that like. And I think after that it was like whatever that song is, like "Goodbye, my lover," like
"Goodbye, my friends."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was tough, but I do what. No ill will towards Joe Klatt. Every time I see him, like I get a good laugh out of it, and we got a memory with the boys. But he did come at me pretty hard, I will say. But oh well, it's with the territory.
all been there.
We've all been there. We've all been there is right. Okay, another question. We have so many questions. This is from your former teammate and former friend of the show, former guest on the show, Dave Foth. He wants to know that for you, Demo, how did you trim down so much after graduation to become the stud that you are? And then tell us about something that happened in your town's high school bowling alley after a football Hall of Fame.
Oh no. So I mean, I guess like the weight loss thing. I mean, I remember it was my senior year, and like Joe Thomas was helping out after he was retired, and like obviously Joe Thomas is like the male model, like Mr. Suave that he is now, just an absolute beast. And I remember just at the time, I was like, didn't know if the NFL was going to work out. I was like, all right, pretty soon my football days might be done. And at that moment, I was like, damn, like it's either going to go one of 2 ways. I'm either going to blow up and just be like a washed up fat guy, or I can try to be like Joe Thomas. And so at that time he was getting a lot of publicity. So I just kind of like looked at everything he was doing. And then when I finished playing, I started just being like, all right, like I'm a single dude, like life in front of me. I'm just going to really lock in on just trying to make this happen. So and then COVID hit. And then during COVID, I like had the opportunity where like, wasn't a whole lot going on. So I just kind of like, maybe not the healthiest. I kind of starved myself a little bit. And then COVID ended, or like kind of ended, the lockup ended. I was able to go back in the gym. And at that point, I was like, oh, I got to get back into this. So then I flew out to Vegas to live with Alec Ingold for a little bit when he was playing for the Raiders. And I was like debating if I'm going to give it another shot. Like I was thinking about coming out of like my early retirement to play in the league. So I started training with him at a facility down there, and I just got like the weightlifting bug, and I fell in love with the whole process, and still figured it was time to, keep the cleats hung up. But from that day on, I've just kind of had the bug to make it happen. And then the bowling story, I can't believe Fof's pulling that one out of the archives. It was my sophomore year. We're in the Cotton Bowl, and like at this point, I'm like a 320-pound backup. Like should not have been 320 pounds. I just like gained bad weight and it wasn't my best football. Let's just say that. And I come home after the bowl game, and I go to this Novi Bowl, which is like in my hometown, Northville, and I'm bowling, and like randomly, like the bowling alley owner comes over to me, and he's like, "Hey, like come over with me. Like I want you to sign this pin." And I'm like, "Okay, like that's nice. Like thanks for making me feel good about myself." And he's like, "No, like I want you to be in the bowling Hall of Fame. Like whenever a celebrity comes in here, like we want to put up like a pin and take a picture with me. And like, I think you're going to be on it." And I was like kind of shocked. I'm like, oh, this is cool. Like, don't know. I'm like, I'm nothing. Like I'm a backup offensive lineman, but whatever. We take the picture and he puts it in the bowling alley. I look up and it's like Chris Chelios, Steve Eiserman, Calvin Johnson, David Moorman, like all right next to each other. So I guess at least in Novi Bull's eyes, I'm in the same conversation with them, which is absurd.
You know what? In our hearts, you're above Chelios and Eiserman. So that's so we'll continue on with that. Tyler, one of the things that I have noticed about you, and I think a lot of people have noticed about you, is that you're really good on the dance floor, especially when it comes to dancing at the basketball games. What's your experience been like with that?
Yeah, so like I guess a lot of that stems from like my group of guys that I was like really close with was, it was Logan Bruss, Josh Seltzner, Blake Smithback, and Mike Balstreri. And like that was like our little gang, I guess you could call it. And like we always like danced all the time. It was weird. It was just
weird.
Yeah, it was. Like Bruss, like Logan Bruss, amazing dancer. I don't know if he'll never tell anybody that probably, but him and Blake.
A pregame with those guys, you'd go to their like apartment or their house, and it would just be like 5 of the largest men you've ever seen in your life and like a bottle of like sparkling apple, like foo vodka. And they would just like sit in a circle and they would just take shots of like the worst vodka in the world. And they would just be like dancing like they're a bunch of like, Greek life people at the KK, but in their house. And it was, sorry, continue, Tyler.
It sounds like, it feels like you were probably listening to Taylor Swift while you were doing that too. That feels like the vibe to me. But
Sometimes we throw that on there. But so like for the basketball games, like dancing at halftime, I remember I just got like the cheerleaders would just ask like any of the football players. It was just like reach out to any of them, like ask them. And I got asked, and I was like, screw it, I'll do it. It's like I did it, and I remember like it was a blast. Like it was a ton of fun. Like
it looks like fun. How much like prep goes into that? Like how many like sessions do you guys do with them?
It's not a lot. It's like I think it's maybe like a total of like 4 or 5 sessions like for a week, and then that's it. And then you go out there and do the like if you watch closely, like you can tell that like half the dudes have no idea like what's going on in the dance routine. So like I did it for 2 years in a row. It's a ton of fun. Like it's a cool experience. Like I'm glad I did it, but it's just so goofy doing it because we're just so big and dancing is just not our thing.
Who's the best dancer on the Badgers that you played with?
I'd have to say Blake Smith back, personally, just in my experience. I've got some videos. I've got some proof of him dancing and doing some crazy stuff. So I would have
Blake
to say
Smith back is probably the most interesting Badger football player of the last 10 years, and a lot of the fans may not know of. Like,
okay, so educate us.
Talent.
Is he like the most interesting man of all time kind of thing, or most interesting man in the world kind of thing, or like what makes Blake Smith back the most interesting Badger of the past decades, in the words of David Moorman?
You know what? I think and Tyler and him are like really close, but Blake and I traveled together. We were roommates when we would travel my last year. And first of all, Blake's just a great guy, but he's a walk-on, right? And he comes in and, right off the bat, the road for him to play is an uphill battle. And he came every day with a positive attitude that legit, like if I was in a position like him or a lot of guys, they wouldn't be able to do. But he just came in, he kept going. He earned the trust of the entire team. Rudy relied on him so much to be like sort of his right-hand man, especially developing younger guys later in his career. Like he would always hold the clipboard. That's an important job. Like you have to write down the formation, the front you're seeing each play. And it's like a really big piece of our in-game adjustments. And he relied on Blake throughout the entire process. And so one, like he earned the trust of everybody there, but off the field, Blake would have these like great guy, weird quirks. Like one, he loves applesauce with pizza. Like
dipping it in it? Like
yeah,
on the pizza?
That's one. He also, he's very Wisconsinite too, but he loves he'll eat like a whole block of like cheddar cheese occasionally.
Who hasn't though? Who hasn't?
True. We all have done it.
With the pizza though, and the applesauce, all three together.
But he also, in the words of Will Ferrell, he is the voice of Fergie and or maybe it's John C. Reilly. He is the voice of Fergie and Jesus combined. He's got a great voice. In camp, we'd always have like singing competitions, and Blake brought out what is it in the deep end or no Shallow? It's Shallow. He did a rendition of Shallow and stole the show. The place went nuts.
It was like we were like he was crowd surfing. It was nuts. Like we were crowd surfing. Like we created a stage with like all the like the box jump stuff. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous.
Blake's an all-time talent. It sounds, musically, but also turns out he's a full showman. He can dance as well. So, shout out Blake. I think he's coaching at UW Waukesha, right? Or
he's a
Whitewater.
Yeah, he was coaching at Whitewater this past year. He was kind of like a GA or assistant, kind of like because I don't know how like GAing works for D3, but it's like kind of like that. Mm-hmm. So he's helping coach like the O-line this whole past year, which is pretty cool.
Blake's one of those guys that 15 years from now, he's going to be an offensive coordinator at a big time school. And it's going to be awesome to see. So shout out Blake, all-time Badger that fans don't know of, and they should get to know him.
Absolutely.
This is literally why like Bernie and I do the podcast. It's for that kind of stuff, right? No one is ever going to know that about Blake Smith back unless we hear it from you guys, right? And so, hey, thank you. That's like exactly like that's the purpose of the show. That's the purpose of the show is to learn about this stuff and you guys like that. Question. I want to give a quick shout out to Aaron Frey, who sent this question, who is also our favorite photographer around Madison. He does a bunch of amazing stuff at AMF Photos. Make sure you're checking out Aaron. Huge fan of the show, huge supporter of the show. So thank you, Aaron, for everything you've done. He had 1,000 questions. I'm going to ask first one, though. What's your go-to place for the O-line as a unit to eat? If you guys are all going out together, where are you guys going?
Ooh, it changed a bunch from my time there. Like when I first got there, it was the infamous Red Robin group of like, actually, no, when I first got there, it was Dan Volz and Tyler. And I forget that there was a sushi place on the east side that we would go to. It was like all you can eat sushi. And that was their place. But then after they left, Red Robin became the spot for like 2 or 3 years. And obviously the famous Sports Illustrated article, like talking about Red Robin, like that was the spot. But then after they left, I don't know, Tyler, when we were there, we were just like McDonald's on Regent Street, like all the way.
So I was just
it's kind of embarrassing to think about, like, but we'd all just literally we'd finish a meeting and we'd all hop on our mopeds and drive to McDonald's. And I'll tell you what, like, you know how sometimes McDonald's is like very hit or miss, like sometimes the fries are cold or the burger doesn't taste as good. At least when we were there, McDonald's on Regent Street was legit always is like the optimal, perfect McDonald's each and every time. And it was like so clean on the inside too, that like, you know, we wouldn't just get carry out and go back to somebody's house. We would all like sit there at the tables and we'd be there for like an hour and a half, just like talking and eating McDonald's, probably going up 2 or 3 times to get more food. But that was our spot. And then Mickey's for breakfast too. But I don't know, Tyler, did it change at all after I left?
Not really. It's always, I just remember when that McDonald's was closed because they were updating it or whatever. That was like the hardest time of my life. It was like in the middle of camp. It was in the middle of camp and they were like updating.
Oh, no, it was during camp?
Yeah, you remember that?
Was I there for that?
Yeah, you were there for that. It was so bad. They were like updating it. There was no McDonald's. The closest one was like all the way across the city that you could moped to. It was terrible.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
But
I do remember that. Like, training camp is a great time, but also it's the worst time for any football player because it's like it's awesome, but there's like there's no break, and you're especially early training camp, like no games in sight. You're like, oh, we have another 3 weeks before we even start prep on game one opponent. So the one thing that gets you through is like this good times with your boys, but also it's like you always look forward to like, all right, what are we getting when practice is done at night? And and everyone just goes back and like, at least you have that to look forward to. But no, I actually remember that when McDonald's was closed, when it was going through that remodel, it was a hard time in all of our lives.
It was terrible. But I don't think, like, for eating places, like, I remember we had that sponsorship with Mission Barbecue for a little bit. You were gone, but it was kind of like we just got like one free meal a week. And, Mission Barbecue is good. And I'm really, thankful for the free food and all the stuff we got. But, like, it just got old real quick eating there once a week. And, we kind of had to drift away from that. It's like it started changing into like, we got that Portillo's deal this past year, which was really nice. Like dudes I would see Joe Tippmann, like every time we had to go, we had to post on like any social media account. And I swear that I saw Joe Tippmann post like Portillo's 4 days in a row on his Instagram, just like back to back to back on his Instagram story of him just going there and eating there. But that was kind of like
advertising
past year, I would say.
Well, so that is actually something. So you played through the NIL transition. That's one of the things that I want to talk to you about, because David unfortunately got out just at the wrong time. Right before he could have gotten the big bucks, the big meals, maybe step up from McDonald's. But so what has that been like? Like the NIL sort of entering, like you're actually like the perfect person to talk about this because you were there. You basically had like 3 years with each, or like sort of 3 and 2 kind of thing with it. And so what has it been like to start getting these opportunities, B, and how has that changed sort of the locker room dynamic, and has it affected the way that guys like, higher profile guys who get the bigger deals, like does that cause friction? Like, so I have like 1,000 questions, but first of all, what's it been like for you?
Yeah, it was definitely like when it first happened, that like it was weird because it felt like wrong almost. Because how like back in the day it was like, do not accept any handouts. Like if somebody pays for you, you leave a big tip so it covers the meal. Like it was kind of like that deal. So it like felt wrong at first. And the first year that it was going on, it wasn't like, especially for like O-linemen, like we weren't expecting anything or looking for anything really. So it was pretty simple and basic. But this past year, like it felt like it gained a ton of traction. And, we had like donors kind of reach out to, especially like the O-line group. And, we had the NIL collective that the school put together, which was really awesome. Like different opportunities, helping out the community too, which was awesome. And, getting some money for that, which I thought was sweet. So, and like in the locker room, never created any friction. Like, guys were really cool about it. Like, it wasn't really like, you don't really like go up to somebody and be like, how much money you making? Like, it was pretty like kept on the low, and nobody was going around bragging. I just remember we had this, the O-line had this awesome donor. He reached out and had us over at his house and gave us some money. And we used this app called Open Doors, which is kind of how we did all of our NIL dealings. And I remember it was like they put it public for like everybody to see, but like only the O-linemen could accept it. So like everybody was like, what the heck is this? Like they're getting up in our business, and we're like, hey man, we don't really get any money anyways. This is like the first, amount of money we're getting in the first place. So, it never created any problems in the locker room. And if anything, it was just like funny seeing all this stuff. And I know there's guys like on the team that were making, the big bucks and stuff. And I'm, happy for them. Like that stuff
for sure.
I think it's great opportunities for, kids from like less fortunate, backgrounds, like being able to send money home. Because I know there were kids that, would be on scholarship and would have to like send part of their scholarship checks, like back to their, hometowns just to help their family out. Like having this, like gives those guys like an opportunity to be able to help them out.
Tyler, I have to imagine too, like at least when I was there, obviously it wasn't in the NIL era, but I feel like players for the most part were really self-aware of where they stood in the pecking order, and in the fans' eyes and the program's eyes, like who are the top players. And if you're a backup, like where you fall in the chart, and it creates opportunity to like, hey, I know I need to do X, Y, Z to get to the pinnacle of being a player. But I'm curious with NIL, like, do you think it was safe to say that most guys in the locker room kind of knew the value where they were, I guess, in the open market, and like based off that, they kind of knew if it was acceptable to kind of chase money or versus not chasing money?
Yeah, and I would say like a lot of the deals were not people chasing after stuff. It was more so like, companies reaching out to different people. And that's kind of how it was. There were deals that, you could put a bid in for, like on the Open Doors app. It was kind of like, how you apply for a scholarship, right? Like if you're, applying for academic scholarships, it was kind of like, you apply for it, the company reviews it and then, decides, if you get it or not. And that's kind of how a lot of them were. So, a lot of guys didn't really do that because it was like you said, like, know your worth, right? Like, know, where you're at, like on the team and, what your value is. So I think guys did a good job at that. There wasn't anybody really like upset that they weren't getting this or weren't getting that. It was pretty like, somebody would reach out to you, be like, oh, that's awesome. Really grateful. So it wasn't any of that.
Was there an NIL deal that you wish you had while you were playing that, didn't necessarily come to fruition? Mine was the KK when they asked me this last time, which I'm sure is no surprise. But
okay. I would have to say, like, if a McDonald's one would be sweet, but I know that probably wouldn't be okay. I think that'd be like frowned upon. But like any like food place, like any kind of food dealings. I know the Chanels had like a deal with Texas Roadhouse, which I wish like we would have gotten a part of. That would have been sweet. Like a free steak every week, like that. That would have been awesome because I go there a lot anyway, so I would have saved myself some money.
I love it.
That's
you, Demo?
Fantastic.
Is there any places that you wish you could have gotten
aside from the KK?
Aside from the KK, you said sponsored by the KK.
I don't know about that. I lost money. I came out of their college in debt because I spent so much money on there. I think they owe me a refund. But no. Besides that, it would be honestly like the problem with it's a blessing and it's a curse of Wisconsin is like that. This like there's so many great restaurants everywhere.
Yeah.
That in most college campuses, like you have the generic Chipotle, Potbelly, right? Like that's it. Wisconsin's like, oh, it's Friday night. Like, we should go to Tornado Room. Like,
yeah. Let's go to the old fashioned. Like,
let's go to the old fashioned. Let's pinkies up. Let's drink some brandy old fashions.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So it's like there's so many restaurants where you can lose money, but it's worth it because the food's great atmosphere. But so I would say my top 3 restaurants in Madison are, if you want Italian, Naples 15. My boy Sal over there. It's a great place. Love Naples 15. That would have been a sweet deal. Steak, I'm biased. Like Tornado Room is fantastic. I think Tornado Room is just like
I think that's pretty universal. I think Tornado Room's pretty universal.
Some people say Rare, and I think Rare is a great establishment. Rare is a great spot, but I like Tornado Room. And
I don't even know if Rare was around when I was there in the mid 2000s.
Yeah, I think Rare.
Tornado Room was, and Tornado Room was delicious from 2004 to 2008. I can tell you that much.
Affordable too. It was definitely Tornado is definitely like affordable to be able to go eat.
Yeah. All right, so that's 2. What's your third spot?
Sneaky spot. And I might get some hate because people think I'm a little bougie for it, but Tempest Oyster Bar. If anyone's been there, it's the sister restaurant.
Yes,
I love Tempest. Tempest is. I went whenever my parents came to town. I was making them take me to either Tempest or Naples 15, and graduation dinner. After I graduated, Tempest was my spot. So shout out to people at Tempest. Great East Coast oysters that they ship in daily. Always kind of a rotating special menu. They usually have like a venison, lobster tail, surf and turf deal. That's fantastic. So shout out Tempest.
Wow,
Tempest I'm still available for sponsorships if they're interested.
Yeah, and so is the show. The show is available for sponsorships as well. But no, Tyler, no. Another question for you. So we never got to it. Like I have to ask your official visit. Who was your host? What was your experience on your official?
So my official, I had a blast at my official. That was I was already committed, so like I already had my stones in place. But I remember my official visit. I went with Logan Bruss, was kind of one of the guys I was with. Aaron Vopel was another guy. Shout out Aaron Vopel. So though Alex Fenton was there, there was a good amount of guys. But I remember my hosts was kind of like the class above mine. So it was like Cole Van Lanen, Luke Benchwall, like those guys. And I remember it was just like we were just bouncing around from party to party all night, just drinking, having a blast, like the usual like official visit stuff. Like it was a ton of fun. So
you weren't drinking because you were underage, remember?
Oh yeah,
yeah. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, we were drinking soda. It was a blast.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of water.
It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. I just remember Luke Benchwall like took us to like Liquid for a little bit. That was terrible. Terrible time. It wasn't fun. I don't even think I was 18 yet. So I had to I remember I used like Luke Benchwall's ID to get me in. They stamped like a little sticker on me and stuff. It was a lot of fun, but like the guys that were there, it was a blast. Like, like getting to know like Cole Van Lanen and Luke and all those guys. It was fun. Like just knowing all those dudes.
When you first came in, was there someone who kind of like took you under their wing? Like, was there like another lineman who looked out for you?
I would say like the two guys that probably looked out for me were probably like Demo and Micah. Those were kind of like the two guys that kind of helped us out. Like, cause like the class above mine, they were kind of focused on their own stuff. Like they were, they were too caught up in like figuring out, their stuff. And like Demo and Micah were kind of the guys that, understood the situation we were in, were able to like, create that bridge between like the older guys and the younger guys. And like, because of like what they did, like I our class like took that to a whole nother level, when younger classes started coming in, because just like how much that helped me, I was like, I got to do the same for all these other, young guys. And so we started doing the same thing and like just creating that, I guess that bond is like an O-line group, all the way down to the earliest levels. Cause I thought, that was like the most important thing is, be like, having a young guy, like not afraid to come up to an older guy and be like, hey, like, how do I do this? Or just being able to ask questions without being like afraid of, the older guys. And that's kind of what like Demo and Micah kind of taught me is just like, being able to share that knowledge of what, like how to act, how to do stuff was just like tremendously helpful, and being able to spread that to everybody else. Like I felt like, helped the whole group as a whole.
I appreciate you saying that, man. I think it's not like the other guys didn't want to do that. I think Mike and I are in a unique position where there's players on the O-line, there's players on the roster who like, hey, their main responsibility is putting everything into game planning and getting their body ready. And they know that they have a really good chance to be a high draft pick when the time comes, right? So they're laser focused on that. And everyone's been a great dude. Everyone's willing to talk. But I think there's certain guys like, if, for example, Mike and I, who at that point in time, our careers weren't necessarily in a position where we're thinking about the NFL. And in general, we're like, all right, how do we make the most out of this experience? And I think what was really helpful for me when I was a young player was having those older guys who were like respected by the dudes who are playing each and every down. They respect that guy, but also he's willing to lend a helpful hand to kind of teach the ways to the younger players. And I was always grateful, have guys like that. Like Ben Hemer, Aiden McNamara, those are two guys that, Badger fans might remember, but they were like that for me. And then Micah Kaploy too. Like Mike is the best. So I think Mike and I, we really, especially when Tyler came in that season, like both of us realized we wanted to improve on the field and put us in positions to compete and start, especially when that great class of, Dieter, at the time, John Deepson, Bo Benchwell, when all those guys moved, David Edwards, when they moved on to the next level, we wanted to be ready to compete. But at the same time, we thought it was really important to make sure the other guys know that hey, don't learn from our mistakes, believe in yourself. Don't let anybody tell you, don't put a limit on yourself, just keep fighting. And it does get better, right? There's a certain day where all of a sudden it clicks, like you're one of the guys. And when that day happens, it's a brotherhood, straightforward.
For sure.
Absolutely.
And being able to coach those young guys too, it definitely contributes to your own learning process as well. Being able to coach those things helps you understand the plays and the playbook and why you're doing stuff. It emphasizes that, and without you even knowing, it helps you retain and remember that information. And it's kind of like another level of learning, I guess, is teaching. And it's Coach Rudy kind of drilled that into our brains as well. It's just kind of that whole process.
Tyler, I have a question for you, and Matt, forgive me if we shouldn't pivot in this direction, but
no, you're good. You're good.
Since 2019, right? We had a great season that year. We unfortunately had the two tough losses, but then the Rose Bowl was brutal, but that was a great experience overall, right? And overall, I think people view that as a successful season. Since then, it was a lot of ups and downs in your career and just in the program in general. What was the last 3 seasons? What has that been like? What made you want to stay in Wisconsin? And really, if you want to kind of excel, this year, I'm sure was very challenging. Just if you want to expand on that, we'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, it was definitely, after that Rose Bowl year, obviously it was the COVID year, and it was weird. It was really weird. I felt like I had been doing really well. My spring ball had been going really good. Sorry, let me go back. So the COVID year, it was weird. Everything got shut down. It was so strange. You could just tell, because during COVID, you weren't able to create a lot of those relationships with, a younger team that we had. It kind of created, a little bit of a, not bad locker room situation, but kind of what I was talking about. Guys weren't as close as they should have been. And I don't blame that on anybody, but, the whole situation that was going on around the globe. It was just weird, but the O-line group that we had that year was a pretty solid group. I know the O-line that we had played really well. I remember we would always score really high, after every game. It was just kind of it was a weird situation, right? The O-line's playing well, but we got things here and there that are just not there. So it was a weird season. And then after that, coming into the 21 season, we're really excited. I had been having a great spring ball. I was super jacked. And then I had this crazy ankle injury that happened. I was doing this ramp run, and I got done doing it. And as I was walking down, my ankle just blew up. It just blew up. It was weird. I didn't pop anything. I didn't tear anything. It just swelled up like a balloon. It was crazy. And it was so bad. I was screaming in pain. And I remember I went home that night, and I had to sleep on my hands and knees. It was crazy. But it turned out I had something called reactive synovitis. It was so weird. It was the weirdest thing that has ever happened. It's just overuse of your joints where they just start leaking fluid. And they didn't know what it was for months. They were thinking it was this tumor and stuff. This is all coming up into the season. It was in July. I was freaking out. I was I don't even know if I'm going to play. They're saying your career might be over. I was freaking out.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And then they just said, screw it. They sent me up to Green Bay to get ankle surgery from one of the best ankle surgeons in the country. And he just went and he scoped it out. And he's yeah, it's just fluid. It's just your joints were leaking fluid. It's just going to take some time to recover. So I remember it was I got 1 week of practice before the 21 season. It was rough. I was learning how to run 2 weeks before that. And I kind of lost my mojo, like kind of feeling it out. It was weird. Like injuries do that to you, right? Like,
Yeah.
Emo knows, like, I'm sure like how like injuries can affect like how you perform and like your mental process. Like I remember I came to the Penn State, like did terrible. Like I was getting roasted online, kind of like the open door man with Demo. Like it was a whole shebang. And then like, we lost that game. And then, I think we lost like 3 in a row, where we were like 1-3. We were doing really bad. But then like, I started to, just kind of adapt to like my ankle, started playing around with it and figured some things out. Team started getting momentum. 7 in a row. Yeah. It was sweet. It was sweet. We had like
it was the combination of your ankle and Braylon Allen.
It was just run. Like we started, it kind of, we were getting some flares of that 2019 season as like a group, started figuring some stuff out. And then, it's crazy that Minnesota game that, was supposed to take us to the Big Ten championship. The whole team was deathly sick the night before the game. It was so bad. Everybody had everybody had like the flu. They had to and it wasn't COVID. They had to quarantine everybody. Like I remember Josh Seltzner, like he went to bed at 6 p.m. Before the game. Like he was like so sick. I was sick. Like dudes were like hacking up lungs. It was so bad. And like we came into that game, like nobody was prepared just because they were just, so sick. It was bad.
Well, and then on top of that, you lose Colin on the first play.
Right. And that was,
and we had him. We had him on like a couple weeks after I guess it was like 2 or 3 months after the game, and he was talking about like what no one knows. Like everyone was sick. Everyone was just puking their guts up, and like the fact that you guys even stayed as close as you did is kind of like a testament to that. So
right. I think it was a like a bioweapon Minnesota deployed in the food or something.
Conspiracy theories. I love it.
But it was bad. And then, we went out and played in the Las Vegas Bowl, and it was fun. We won, hard-earned win. And, Coach Rudolph, that was like, he talked to us and was like, hey, like, I'm out of here, guys. Like, he was letting us know. It was rough. It was really hard. Like, like guys were crying and, for good reasons. Like, he's a great guy. And, he's like, it's weird, switching O-line coaches after him being for so long. So it was tough. Like him telling us it was his last game, and that meeting was hard, and, love the man to death and wish him well where he's at. But, after that, we come into this season, high hopes, had a good team, had a good group of guys, but, kind of newish offense, not crazy new, but, different, names for stuff, not crazy different, but, different names, different, kind of schemes, different, thinking a little bit. So, I think it was just guys trying to figure that out. And then, obviously PC getting fired in the middle of the season, that was rough. Like, that was rough, man. Like,
what went through your mind when that happened? Like, do you remember where you were when the news kind of broke?
Yeah, we were at the donor's house that I was talking about before.
Really?
It was really awkward. And it wasn't announced, but they said that we had a team meeting on Sunday night, and like that, as Demo would know, that never happens. Like you never do that. There had been some rumors and talks about it, but it was like, we started last year, about the same. Why would they, get rid of him now? Then we come to the meeting, and it was rough, man. Like stormed out of the meeting room, and it was weird. It was a really weird situation. Getting rid of the Coach Chris. I love the man. He's a great coach, and gave me every opportunity that I had. So
same, man.
I wouldn't say anything different about it. Great guy.
I don't think there's ever been a negative syllable uttered about Coach Chris from anyone who he's coached.
Yeah, he's 100% a player's coach. Like he doesn't care about the fame, doesn't care about any of that, doesn't care about the media. Like all he cares about is the guys. Like he's like you could go and talk to if you got like going on, no matter like who you were on the team. Like he knew everybody, which was awesome.
Well, I think the hardest part about the way that he was let go for all the former players is the guy, he's lived Wisconsin his entire life. Basically, like his dad, coached in the state. He played here. He coached, came back. Like he's an all-time Badger. He's everything, a Badger football player, a Badger alumni should be. And I think a lot of us, if, we get it, business happens. Sometimes you need to make a switch. I think we all would have liked to see him at least finish out the season instead of putting you guys through the situation that you guys ultimately went through.
Right.
What was it like? I mean, after you left, Coach Leonard comes in, and for for better sake of the word, it seemed like Coach Leonard did a really good job of bonding you guys together and letting you finish out the season. But can you expand on what that was like a little bit more?
Yeah, Coach Leonard, like, it was awesome because he wasn't trying to, change a bunch of stuff. Like, he was, and his whole job was kind of like keep everybody together, keep the team together, and he did a great job at that. Like, he didn't really get the benefit of the doubt because, like, that was his job. That whole year was just trying to keep the place from falling apart. So he wasn't able to, do anything crazy or, promote like a bunch of new stuff just because he was trying to keep, his players, happy with the program and happy with everything. But, he did a great job. He rallied us. We started winning some games here and there, and it was a weird season, man. Just having to go through all that. And
yeah,
it was just rough. Like, I felt bad. I felt really bad for like all the younger guys, because obviously we didn't know what the situation was going to be like what it is now. But like before, we didn't know what was going to happen, and they weren't, telling Coach Leonard like, what the situation was going to be, and he was unsure, and it was just rough. But the new staff that came in, like Coach Fickle, I've heard tremendous things about him. I didn't play in the bowl game because I wanted to start prepping for my Hula Bowl, because towards the end of this past year I started playing tight end because I'd hurt my ankle, so I time to rest that and get ready for my Senior Bowl game that I was excited for. But I went to the first team meeting that Coach Fickle was in, and it was awesome. Like, his message to the team was like, we're here to change stuff, and rightfully so. The game is changing. You can't just it's hard to run like power formations now because they just put like 9 guys in the box. It's like, all right, throw the ball then. So
did you see the stat, by the way, about Braylon about 8-man boxes?
I saw that. The most.
I mean, like, you were trying you were trying to block those dudes. It's it's gonna be very, very different.
Yeah, I know. Talking to some of the guys that are on the O-line now, he said that the O-line shouldn't see more than 6-man boxes pretty much all year, which is exciting. Like, as an O-lineman, that's awesome. It's like you just point to the guy you're going to.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, too, like when we've had those seasons with especially with guys like Quintez, AJ Taylor, Jake Ferguson, like when we had, and Jack Cohn too, like when Hornibrook, before that, when Hornibrook was humming, and there was, during that season, like when the passing game opens up, it opens up the run game so much more. And we're able to get, guys like JT to just have monster seasons, incredible backs, but it makes our life as an O-line so much easier. And I think moving forward, like next year, I'm so excited for this group of guys. Some of them were there when I was there. A lot of them, I think, actually, almost all of them are gone now. Joe was the last one, but you meet some guys in the like Nelly, just younger guys, and I'm excited to see them kind of ball out. You know what I mean?
Fertney's still there, by the way.
Oh, I forgot about Fertney. Fertney, the old man
come back.
Fertney
come back. He dipped his toe in the transfer portal. What is that? What is the introduction of the transfer portal been like for for Badger culture? I mean, because I remember it was interesting. I'm gonna go back to what we talked about with Colin again, because because he was a transfer, but he's like, I had to go tell my head coach that I was listening to this clip earlier today for some reason. I had to go tell my coach face to face, I want to transfer, and he had to say yes or no. Like, the coaches could tell you not to transfer. And then you had to sit out the year, and now you can just peace out and your locker's empty the next day. I mean, that's got to be crazy.
Yeah, it's weird. It definitely is weird. And like, Wisconsin had never been like, dudes had rarely transferred out. Like, that had never.
There have been like two real notable ones.
Yeah.
In the 2000s.
Right. And like, even like, as an O-line group, we never had a single O-lineman transfer in. So, I'm sure it's different, like with all these, I know there's some transfer linemen that came in and they're really good players, like, absolutely. So I'm excited to see that, but it's definitely weird. I think there's some pluses to it for guys that may not be in the right situation to be able to go find a home and play well. But also, if you're a young guy and, you may think that, you're not getting the playing time you think, and then you decide to leave, like, especially as a young guy like that. Every young guy thinks that. I'm sure Demo thought the same way. I thought the same way. Like, I was like, I should be starting, blah, 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 blah. But like in reality, it's all about waiting, for your time and when you're ready. Because, when you're a good player, you'll most likely, end up on the field. So it's kind of those situations where, like, for an older guy, I get it, based on your situation. But for a younger guy, it's kind of, it's up in the air because you don't know.
The other thing that, like, you're always just one injury away. Like when you see a guy who's second on the depth chart, like literally in the 2 deep, entering the transfer portal mid-season, it's like, to me, at least for me on the outside, I'm thinking, what are you doing? That guy in front of you can get injured on any play, and you could be getting his reps. So I personally, like, that's just me, but maybe I'm just old.
Yeah,
yeah, 100%. And Tyler, like, this. I mean, you're training for the draft, right? Like the opportunity to play at the next level, the dream of every football player. It's right in front of you, right? And for a lot of Badger players, like the opportunity's there. But let's face it, it's like the old Enterprise rental car commercial. Like, what is it, like 97% or 99% of college athletes will go pro in something other than sports, right? Guys like me. And it's one of those things. I think there's a tremendous undervalue of grinding a situation out. Maybe you don't necessarily get the playing time you want, but you're part of a team, you're a part of an institution, you're a part of an alumni base and network that presents opportunities, to you for the rest of your life. Like, being a Wisconsin football player, being able to say I stuck it out for 5 years, that's helped me immensely in my career, right? It's opened up opportunities for, Matt to invite me on the podcast and talk to you and, like, still feel like I'm involved, right? Like, I think, every kid's different. You have to view it as some kids have to focus on getting the next level for a monetary purpose. But, don't be afraid to old school, grind it out, because you never know what opportunity is going to open for you. Like, I didn't even see the field really until my 5th year, right? And great things can happen.
Next thing you know, you're starting the Rose Bowl.
Exactly. Yeah. And you have a chance to go in the next level, and you got to evaluate the situation then. But at least I gave myself, the opportunity that, hey, football is not my end all be all. I have a great relationship network that I built at the University of Wisconsin that's always going to be there for me. So I think that's something that I encourage kids and recruits and younger guys to keep in mind as well.
And like Demo is like the perfect epitome of like grinding hard, never know when your opportunity is going to rise. Like, he is the perfect example of that. Cause like Demo's career hadn't been, what he expected for like the longest time. And, a lot of people face the same situation. And the next thing you know, Demo's having, the greatest spring ball an offensive lineman has ever had, truly. And then he's on the list of like, dudes that are going to start and, ends up balling out the whole year. And that's just how it is. Like, you never know, what the situation is going to be like. You never know, like, what your time or like when your time will be. And like, I mean, Demo, he was playing fullback and tight end, and he was taking every chance he got and was like murdering guys on the field. Like, truly, like
You're making me blush, Tyler. Stop.
Seriously. He was setting an example for dudes. And like, Coach Rudolph, even Coach Rudy, after Demo left, like, would always share Demo's story because it was, it was that impactful and that truthful. Like, grinding out those years, like, means so much more than maybe looking for that instant satisfaction of playing. And I'm sure Demo had opportunities to transfer or go somewhere else. And I'm sure he thought about it because there were times where I thought about it too. And, maybe I wasn't in the right spot and I wanted to leave, but like, just being able to grind out those years and being able to think like, I really did this. I worked through all this and achieved what I wanted to achieve. And like, just having that, on your back is like something that nobody can take away from you for like the rest of your life. And obviously it's expanded into Demo's career as well. Like, he's doing great right now.
Beecher, dude, thank you. I appreciate you saying that, man. And like, your career has been, this is gonna be like a weird, like, love.
This is what we're here for. This is what we're here for.
I mean, but Tyler, just look at, your own career, right? Like, you came in like highly recruited, and everyone knew you had immense talent right off the bat. And the first couple of years, like, obviously you could have gone to a lot of places to start right away, but the same thing, man. You just kept grinding. And 2019, you split time, you played a lot, and then after that, you were a 3-year starter, and now you're gonna go play in the league. Like, that's a pretty amazing story too, right? So the beautiful thing of it, there's opportunity when you come to Wisconsin. You can play in the league. You can, set yourself up for a career after football. I think the main lesson that I kind of like would tell kids when they come into is like, don't be afraid to grind it out, but at the same time, like, make sure you buy in on day one. Don't like let a moment slip by, because I had moments earlier in my career, or maybe if I just would have been more prepared either emotionally, like a little bit stronger mentally, I could have maybe played earlier, right? But for whatever reason, I was like, no, that my time will come, but don't be afraid to grasp the moment. Like buy in day one, be locked in, be a buyer, don't be a seller, Tyler, and like good things will happen. So yeah, I think it's a special place, that's for sure.
Couldn't agree more. I think that is the perfect place for us to wrap it up here tonight. Tyler, now we're just going to have you back because I literally have at least a dozen more questions for you that we couldn't even get to. I'm going to do one rapid fire one right now. Toughest Badger to block, like one-on-one on an island, and toughest non-Badger to block in your career?
I would have to say Isaiah Loudermilk is the toughest defensive lineman I've ever gone against. You cannot block that man at all. And I've never seen anybody do it successfully.
Why? What makes him so unblockable?
He's long, he's strong, and he's powerful. Like you try to reach, like in practice, you try to reach that guy on a reach block. It's like reaching Aaron Donald is like a comparison. Like it's.
I remember like his recruiting story to me was fascinating. He played like 8-man football in high school. He was like quarterback and like everything amongst everything else. And like some of the clips, like watching him in rural Kansas is kind of hysterical. Those are some of my favorite. Like I don't know. I mean, I'm a junkie, right? I love the recruiting stuff, and like especially when you get an Isaiah Loudermilk. Like he was one of the guys I remember very vividly. Because he had 2 H's at the end of his last name, and because he was playing 8-man football and just like throwing dudes like left and right, like it was nothing.
I'm sure
he's special, man. I was actually his official visit host when he came, and it was just his career. I mean, the guy like came in, like didn't really know, I think, much about what a D1 program is like, and he became one of the Badger greats, and I was crushing it for the Steelers. So yeah. I agree. He was the hardest guy I ever went against. And that's saying something because we played against guys like Chase Young, like Mo Hurst in the day, even George Karlaftis. Yeah, like we played against some really good players. Thibodeau, like, but Isaiah by none is the most challenging person we've ever had to block. Matt, question for you though. Rapid question since we're doing it. How'd you break into the business, man? You talked about your recruiting junkie. Like, what made you want to start the podcast with Bernie? I think we want the people to know about you. You've been asking us questions.
Well, I will be brief because you guys are the stars. But I started podcasting in 2015. A different show called the Illegal Motion College Football Podcast. We just did our 300th episode this year.
Nice, congratulations!
Earlier in the year, it is me, my roommate from Madison, Josh Cook, who is actually an Iowa Hawkeyes fan. He's not a Badger fan, even though he went to UW, which we don't talk about. But actually, we do.
It's like Judas.
It's a little strange. It's a little strange, but it's strange. His brother went to Michigan and is also a Hawkeye fan. They're from Iowa City. But whatever. Anyway, and then my buddy Corey, who went to Georgia, worked for the Georgia program in the video department, worked for Rivals.com in the video department, and is a high school offensive coordinator here in Nashville, Tennessee, where I live. We started doing that podcast, and I was just interested. I'm like, these guys know a lot about football. Josh has a really good blog. Corey works for Rivals. Let's just get them together and talk. We started doing it, and we just did it. I had no idea what I was doing. Went back and listened to one of the earlier episodes for the 300th celebration, listened to the audio quality, and I was just like, I'm ashamed of myself. But here we are. Started podcasting for Believe during the pandemic, 2020, with a Vanderbilt show here in Nashville. My wife is a Vandy alum. We're Vandy season ticket holders. I've, for better or for worse, a lot of the times, because if you've watched Vanderbilt play football, it's where, well, it's the, I don't know, like there's no equivalent in the Big Ten. There's no Big Ten. Like even like Northwestern, which should be the equivalent, Northwestern's good half the time. So there's no equivalent in the, but I started doing it for them, and I was like, listen, like my heart's with the Badgers. You guys know my heart is with the Badgers. That's what I want to do. Is if it's fine, go out on your own. Like I did solo podcasts for the starting in late 2020. Just had like recruits on, and like we were like I had TJ Bullers on, I had Al Ashford on, Mike Jarvis. Who else did I have from that class? Deacon Hill. Just starting to talk to those guys and people who cover the recruiting world. And the summer of 2021, I started getting into graphic design a little bit more, and so I made a bunch of Instagram graphics. Greatest Badgers of the 21st century by position. So I'm like, first one I put up is the backfield. Who have I got? I've got Russ, I've got Melvin, I've got Jonathan Taylor, and I've got Matt Bernstein. Because to me, Matt Bernstein is the greatest fullback who's played at Wisconsin. I know everyone's gonna say Alec, and Alec is incredible in his own right, but anyone who watched Matt Bernstein in that Penn State game, and I was there in the stadium for it, like that was like a transformational, like human moment for me. Like seriously, it was my first college game day experience. It was my first night game at Camp Randall. It was my freshman year.
Yeah.
Matt Bernstein comes out of his fast to single-handedly take the offense and beat Penn State, hurdling dudes. Like it's a 270-pound fullback with the eye black covering his entire face, and it was an out-of-body experience. Like watching, like that was the first time I experienced Camp Randall like whipped up into a fervor. Like you guys know how it gets. Just like it's 11 out. It turned up to 11. And that was the first time I'd experienced Camp Randall turned up to 11. And that was just like amazing. And I followed Bernie's career for a long time after that and everything like that. And I just love Bernie. And Bernie just commented on the Instagram post, dude, that's really nice. Like I started DMing him. I was like, dude, would you want to come on and talk with me? He comes on the show and it's like just instant connection. We had the rapport immediately. Kind of like we do, and there are certain guys who, you get to know and just have it instantly. And Bernie and I had it instantly. And I knew from that second. So I'm like, immediately after that episode, I'm like, how would you feel about doing this with me every week? I was like, this sounds great. And here we are, like a year. Here we are.
That's awesome.
Here we are a year and a half later. And thanks to you guys, we hit 50,000 downloads in December. So I'm super pumped about that. And we are continuing forward. So
that's awesome, man.
It's been a wild ride. I've been in this now for this is my 8th year in the podcast world, and I'm just now, I'm starting to make a teensy little bit of money on it, so I can at least cover my operating expenses. But I love it, man. And and through this, I've gotten to meet a lot of other people. Clint Cosgrove, who works for Rivals, has become one of my closest friends. I now work for the Rivals Badger page, producing a TV segment for them once a week. That's on their YouTube page, and I've gotten to know so many different Badgers and people who are around the Badgers. And I've just always been someone who likes to, I care probably more about the off the field stuff than I do the on the field stuff. Like, yes, I live and die with every single freaking down. Like I can't win. Like if another team is driving the ball on the Badgers, like I cannot watch the game. Like my wife gets my wife gets like upset because I get like physically ill. I walk out of the room. Like I can't watch it. I will have to turn it off to like go back through and process things. And like, okay, now I know the result. I can watch this and process it. But as I've gotten to know more and more Badgers off the field, and like that's the stuff I care about. And I think that for a lot of fans, and like one of the reasons that Wisconsin is special is because I think that the university and the athletic department not just project themselves, but also really embody like it's the person you are off the field is just as important, if not, well, in many ways is more so important than the person you are on the field. And so, and I think that is one of the things that attracted me to Wisconsin in the first place, just as a student. And, I was a student athlete for a minute, like I always say, until Chris Presley went and took my lunch money. And then, but, it's just, and so I want to tell those stories because I think the people off the field are way more interesting. I think like it's cool. Yeah. We've seen what you did on the field, but I'm way more interested in what your official visit was like. What happened on a random Tuesday on scout team when you got your beat by Nick Herbig the first time you saw him in practice, try to rush around you and realize, oh crap, this guy can freaking fly off the line. Those are the stories to me that are way more exciting than anything that happens under the lights on a Saturday.
No, I love it, man. No, I mean like. First, I mean, like, that moment, like it's not only just a great Wisconsin sports moment, it's a iconic college football moment, right? In general, with Bernie, and he brings, he has the relationships, he's a legend, so he brings that credibility, and then obviously, like you have the background in media, and I really appreciate more than there's a lot of podcasts, a lot of good Badger content out there, but I think you hit on the head. And sometimes there's a lack in the stories, and so I appreciate you guys telling the stories, having guys like myself and Tyler on, and it's been fun to see it grow and excited to see where everything goes. So appreciate it. Keep it up. Well,
that is, I remember, this was like a couple months ago, Mike Eccles is like DMing us being like, can I come on the show? It's like, hey, Mike, you were a 4-year starter and All-American. Like, yeah, hey, yes. like people reaching out to us to come on the show. That's my holy belief moment, right? Like, I can't believe that these people are DMing us, say they think, can I come on the show to talk? Like, what the heck? Like who am I? Like, why do you want to talk? Why do you want to talk with me? Like, you want to talk with Bernie. Yeah, I get everyone's Bernie, but but I'm like, that is really cool. And like to find out that like a lot of former Badgers listen to this, I was like a very significant portion of our listening audience is actually former Badger players. Like that, to me, that's the coolest thing. I don't need a dime from this to know that like these guys love reliving those moments and love hearing the moments from the guys from the other generation. To me, that's like payment enough times 1,000. Like, it's awesome. I just love telling stories and sharing Badger stories and want to keep doing so.
Absolutely,
amazing, man.
So,
love it, dude.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up a phenomenal show here, an extended show here today with David Moorman and Tyler Beach. Tyler, best of luck to you going through the draft process. We're going to have to circle back with you, right after you get drafted, and go pro and, talk about transitioning as a rookie with you as well. It's an honor to have you on. Thank you for everything you did for the Badger program. David, thank you for being the man. And folks out there, don't be surprised when David becomes a recurring co-host, because let's face it, we love him. So that is enough for us here today on the Believe in Badgers podcast presented by betonline.ag. Thanks for listening. And until next time, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin, baby.